and welcome back to BSG. Tonight we're taking a bit of a deep dive into the Avid S6L platform and having a look at a few features and also just having a bit of a chit chat just about engineering in general. So tonight we've got a few guests lined up to join us, the first of which he works for Avid in the product development team and also is a very well regarded engineer in his own right, working for bands such as Coldplay, Radiohead and Massive Attack. So from Avid, please welcome Robb Allan.
Hey Rob, good to see you. How you doing?
Thanks Rob, glad to have you here. And also tonight we've got an Australian engineer who's probably known to quite a few of you. He's currently doing a lot of work with the band Rüfüs. Welcome Cam Trewin.
How you doing?
Thanks Cam, great to have you here with us. So obviously with the way things are at the moment, there's not much happening in the event and festival space. So what have you guys been doing to sort of pass the time and keep yourselves busy during this time? Rob?
Well, I've been hard at work doing some webinars for Avid, making some videos about the S6L, had some great conversation with all kinds of different engineers from all around the world, the different disciplines that we work in. Apart from that, I've been doing some mixing here in my studio and, a bit of exercise, a bit of walking in the mountains and a bit of sailing, which I like to do as my hobby.
And Cam, how about yourself? How have you been keeping busy?
Pretty similar to Rob. Yeah, not much at all. Being at-home dad and doing at-home schooling at the moment, so that's been taking up most of the time at the moment. But yeah, a little bit of post-recording. Did a little an ISO set for a band called Lastlings, which we shot at the Old Melbourne Jail here in Melbourne. It looked really cool. So yeah, I just did some post-mixing on that as well. And a little bit more mixing with Rüfüs as well. But besides that, just taking it easy.
So just to help us get a little bit acquainted, let's just have a quick chat about sort of what your most memorable shows that you've done so far have been and why. Rob, what's your most memorable show?
I can't really pick one, honestly, because I've had loads of memorable shows, but I'll do a quick kind of edited highlights of I think I was actually one of my favourite old-time shows I did. I was mixing Coldplay at the time when we did a Live 8 in London. It was a kind of ridiculous bill. It was Madonna, U2, Pink Floyd, Elton John. It was crazy. We had like half an hour or something in the morning, and we flew back up to a gig we did in Scotland, which was pretty cool. First time I headlined Glastonbury. That was great. That was Manic Street Preachers on the Pyramid tent. That was kind of amazing. And then the first time I heard, I was standing behind a mixing disc mixing Radiohead when they played Creep. That was pretty astonishing as well and very emotional. I was in Argentina. My wife was there. She had a little manly tear, I have to say. I was so moved. Yeah.
And Cam, what was your most memorable show?
Well, we just did a series of Red Rocks shows at Amphitheatre's incredible. Such a beautiful space to do a concert in. Yeah, that was really, really great. Obviously, we had put in the GSL DMB for that, which sounded amazing. Firing into that amphitheatre, that with the S6L was really good. So yeah, that was quite memorable. We also did headlined the theatre stage at Coachella last year, which was nerve-wracking and fun. Obviously, we had the live feed going out for that stream as well, so you've kind of got that in the back of your mind. But yeah, it was pretty memorable. A lot of people there. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. So you both work with some great bands with some quite diverse requirements. Rob, what are some of the challenges you face working with a band like Massive Attack?
Well, the challenge with mixing Massive Attack is they're very particular about every element of the production. 3D, who's the kind of the boss, really, he has his hands and his ears and his eyes and everything. So it's a very organized show. It all runs to time code. It all runs to LTC. I have several hundred snapshots throughout the show. Very specific sounds have to happen at very specific times. So it's highly programmed. In fact, I probably shouldn't say this, but they could probably just, press. I could just press go at the beginning of the gig, and it would just pretty much run itself. It's so programmed. In contrast to Radiohead, which is completely organic, and there's not even a click track, there's no backing tracks, there's nothing. It's just completely organic. They start a song by the drummer going 1, 2, 3, 4, like we were back in the 60s. So, yeah.
Rock and roll, yeah.
Yeah.
And Cam, working with Rüfüs, do you face some similar challenges? What's that like?
Well, actually, really similar to what Rob was saying. The guys are very sonic focused with their production as well. A couple of the guys are engineers themselves, so they have a very clear intent as to what they want to achieve sonically, which is great, which gives me a lot of feedback. So, when we're working on pre-production, we'll sit together and really go through the V-check, and they'll do a record, come back in, we'll sit down, we'll have a listen. And we've got this great fluidity now between us over the years, working with them for nearly 6 years now. There's a lot of trust and a lot of fluidity there with us. But yeah, in terms of challenges, very similar in what Rob was saying. They don't actually have that much playback. A lot is played in live, and for an electronic act these days, that's a big thing, So I don't have those playback channels to really rely on as much as I do all of their synths and everything else. They've got lots of stuff going on in terms of chaos pads and all the profits and the SPDs and everything. So it's a very dynamic show, and things can come lunging out of you at any moment. So hence why I'm very snapshot focused as well. It's all to time code. It's heavily programmed. And I shouldn't be saying this either, but, once the show is rolling, I can effectively walk away and it can roll itself. But no, hands are on faders, but it does require a lot of automation.
Just one thing, just to be clear, Massive Attack don't use playback either. It's all played. I didn't mean that. I mean that can walk away because it's on tape. It's all played. There's two drummers. One's playing acoustic drums, and the other one's playing samples and triggers. And so no, it's all played, but it's just really tight. It's just really rehearsed. Yeah.
So obviously you're both S6L users, and Avid have recently released version 6.3 for the console, which not many people will have seen yet, obviously due to the lack of activity around. Rob, will you be able to give us a bit of a run through of the new features and what we might be seeing when we're back behind consoles in the near future?
Yeah, sure. 6.3 was the main thing around 6.3 was there was two main things. The first one was introducing switches into the network, and the second one was introducing 3D immersive audio plugins. So actually, if you let me, I can share my screen. Right. So this would be a typical star topology, and as you can see, we have two Luminix switches in the middle of our network now. So this would be a kind of maxed out 2 desks sharing through the switches. So we have an A switch and a B switch for redundancy. So that would mean all of the A ports from the engines and the stage boxes go to the A port, and all of the B ports from the engines and the stage boxes go to the B switch. So then, therefore, if either switch fails or either part of the connections to either of those switches fails, there's complete redundancy between them. Now, the beautiful thing about this is not giving us any more inputs or outputs or any more equipment than we already can use up to this point. But now we've established this platform. In the future, it opens us up to all kinds of possibilities, as you'll see moving forward. The great thing about switches is it limits the number of hops. One of the reasons that we can have only 7 devices on our ring topology is that it would exceed the number of hops for AVB if we had any more. But now it's only ever 1 hop to a switch, right? So that means there's no, in theory, I'm not promising anything here, but in theory there's no limit to the number of devices you can connect to that switch because you don't run out of hops anymore. So watch this space. There'll be some interesting developments on this. This is step 1. And moving forward, there'll be all kinds of developments based on this backbone. And then the other thing, I'm going to share something else, which is, I bet you this bugs you, Cameron, which is, if you have your screen, right? If you have your screen on the right-hand side, right? So here's my screen. If you have your screen on the right-hand side, up until this point, the mouse was in the wrong place, right?
Yeah.
So can you guys see that? Yeah. So now I can choose whether my display is on the left, on the right, or above the console, and then the mouse goes in not
the
that
right
I use
direction.
the mouse much, but the mouse goes in the right direction, right? So it's a little thing, but it's a little thing if you've been using the S6L for many years. It's annoyed the hell out of you. To the point where I've had to kind of relearn to use the mouse in the right direction, but it does come back pretty quickly. And then there's a couple of little things as well. So, for example, if I go to the inputs page here, this makes a big difference in the standalone mode. I can now actually just type in values and the EQ and stuff. So I can just type in. Can you see that? Yeah, I can just type in a value of whatever on my EQ. It just makes prepping a show in advance a whole lot easier. So we've done a whole bunch of stuff in this standalone software, which just kind of makes your life a little bit easier. So if I can open up my aux page all the way open. That makes it much easier to pre-program your show and stuff if you can do stuff like that. And also, we've gone through this process of product hardening. So one of the things we've been working on in the last year or so is just we give ourselves a whole list of ways that we could just improve the day-to-day performance of the desk. And actually, within 6.3 under the hood, we've changed a whole bunch of things in the software and in the networking setup. And actually, we've addressed 200 minor bugs in 6.3, and in 6.4, which will be out later in the year, we're going to finish the list of all the possible bugs that we'd found all over the last several years. So the desk is just massively more solid, and it's just rock solid at the moment. Unfortunately, not many people are doing gigs with it at the moment, but yeah, that's it so far. There's a little improvement on the MLM, which maybe later on I can just we can do a cutaway and I can just drop it in. There's a big improvement on the way that we show our snapshots in the MLM, and I'll show you that later on.
Thank you for that, Rob. That's great to see some of the new features that are coming through and some very useful bug fixes in there as well. So you mentioned snapshots there, of course, which are a very prevalent tool on the S6L platform. Now, I know you both use snapshots quite heavily in your shows, so you're able to give us some insight into the types of snapshots you run and how you're using them to help your workflows. Cam, can you give us some insight into your show file with Rüfüs?
Yeah, so I obviously use the LTC in, which will comes from the playback, which is doing all the firing from show start all the way through. I mean, for me, primarily, I'm using it for key changes, for the vocal, for the auto tuning, and obviously tempo from song to song, EQ, and then primarily, obviously, layout function as well. So I really heavily rely on that. Having, inputs mute and disappear when they're not being used, and that kind of fader configuration changing to my workflow. I'm a always fingers on faders mixer, so I always need what I need in front of me at all the whole time. But when I initially built my file, I had built it on a 24D. So the last fader bank I didn't use, obviously, but now stepping over to the 32, which I've now been running this console for the last couple of years, I've just added a couple more things to it here and there, but everything is mainly in that center section for me. But yeah, very much heavily rely on those snaps to kind of get me through.
And are you chaining shots on more of a song-to-song basis, or are you firing multiple shots within one song?
Yeah, no, I haven't gone that deep. It is still just song-to-song for the moment for me. Happy to just have the song play along and then and mix as I can.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, Rob, can you give us a look at some of your snapshots from your Massive Attack file?
I some of my songs, you can see my snapshot list here, right? So you can see here that on the right hand side, this is the time code. These are the moments. This is the places where my snapshots will change. Some of the songs have crazy amounts of. So Mezzanine, for example, has eight snapshots within the song, which are fired individually. Group 4, I think, might be probably the one that has most. So Group 4 has 16 snapshots within the song. So the way it works is this: I'll recall the first snapshot, and as you can see, I have quite a lot of the scope enabled. I'll be changing faders and mutes. There's a reset for the beginning of the song. EQs and dynamics and pans will change. Some of the plugins will change. Actually, even some of the names will change because some of the stems that I use are different on different songs. So I'll change the names of the stems. So rather than it saying stem 1, stem 2, it'll say strings or percussion or whatever. But some of the snapshots do very little things. Like this snapshot here, all it does is it changes the send on the vocal. It's literally just a send on one word that word is captured. It's a 3-second delay, so it's a big long delay, and it's easier for me to program it to the code than to try and do it manually, because sometimes I'm 50 meters away, right, or whatever. So by the time the delay of the audio coming from the PA to me, I can clip the front end of the song or something, front end of the word or something. So I program little things like that. It depends as I go through the song. Different things will change. You can see here these are very small changes. The red channels at the bottom, those are the channels affected by my snapshot, and up here. In the middle, the scope set, those are the parts of the channels that are affected. So some of it's very, very minimal changes. I think in the middle of this song, there's a big long crossfade that happens, which is a kind of big drum move is here. All of the drums fade down to sound like they're coming out of a little radio microphone. So it's a really kind of closed up, horrible little snarly drum sound. And then over that, you can see it's a 10-second crossfade on the snapshot. That sound fades down and the natural sound fades back up. So it's a kind of crossfade of sound rather than volume. So yeah, I mean, I can talk about snapshots a lot. I use them massively. It's massively important to me. So if you can see that little green clock means it will be triggered by time code. And as you can see, those are all the codes. Each song has an hour. So there's a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 5 hour, whatever for each song. And Group 4 is hour 15, as you can see. And you can see, like, there's a snapshot at 2 minutes 22, there's one at 2 minutes 32. So that's hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. It's 25 frames a second. So that's a 25th of a second. I can be as accurate. You can see there's one there at the bottom, 23:16. I've actually gone into the frames to make sure it's accurate to a 25th of a second at the point where the snapshot is recalled.
Yeah, very cool. So it's really giving you tools to do things that almost aren't possible to do manually on the fly. It's giving you that sort of level of automation to really put the detail into the mix.
There's two things that Avid brought to this world. The first one was virtual sound check. A colleague of mine, Robb Scoville, is largely accredited with inventing that. And so being able to have virtual sound check with the detailed snapshots and plugins means that I can just mix my live show in the way that I would mix an album. And as Cameron says, the greatest thing about it is the artist can sit with you and work on the mix. So in a way, I'm the engineer of the live show, and the artist is the producer. So I'm enabling the mix, and the artist can be involved in it to the minutest detail. And a 3D will be that. He'll be like, those hi-hats need to be louder for 4 bars there. And so I'll, do a little snapshot and do 4 bars, and I'll store it, and he likes to see me store it and know that it's kind of done. And so it gives me an enormous amount of control, even to the point where I have snapshots, and I call them non-sequential snapshots, so snapshots with no numbers. And I use these for all various different things, including talking between songs and stuff. So a snapshot with no number means I can recall it at any point. It doesn't interfere with my LTC, and it doesn't interfere with my next, which is my kind of analog backup, which is I'll press next if for whatever reason the LTC doesn't run. So I can have all of these snapshots you can see at the end of my list that have no number to them, and it means that they can be used for various different things.
And obviously with both of you using LTC basically to clock your show, Rob, I believe you got a bit of a great little diagram to show how that kind of hooks up with the S6L platform.
I certainly do. Stand by. Look at that. You see that? That's so here we go. On the stage, Cameron, I don't know if this is the same for you, but I'll talk to my system. On the stage, we have a playback engineer. So the playback engineer has a whole bunch of stems that's used mainly on stage actually as kind of click tracks. Everybody's different click tracks. Some people have count ends. So there'll be, for the vocalist, it might be a 4 count before their vocal starts because, the music's quite abstract, and there can be a piano chord to pitch against that's not heard by the audience, just for the singers to pitch to. And there will be there's 4 stereo stems that come up to me, which might have little bits and pieces of things that are not readily available live. So it might be like a string section or a little bit of percussion or something. But, 1 or 2 stems come to me, most songs. But the playback engineer is mainly dealing with the band. There's 11, 12 musicians on the stage, so he's making sure that they're all ready to start, for one thing, and then they're all receiving the clicks and stuff that they need. And sometimes they'll edit that on the fly, so they'll be like, actually we need to add another 8 bars there. In a production rehearsal, they'll add 8 bars, and that throws all my LTC out, and there's a whole big recalculation, but that's another story. So anyway, so as well as doing playback, when he presses play, LTC comes out of his system. He uses Ableton Live for the playback setup. He has a redundant Ableton Live setup. LTC comes into a mic pre, is plugged into a mic pre as audio. That audio obviously comes up the multi-core into my desk. It's an input channel into my desk. And then from my desk, I use direct out from that channel and into the LTC in. The S6L has an LTC in port, which was something that I requested when we were in the drawing stage, when we're still just, this desk was a drawing on a piece of paper. I drew an LTC import and it kind of stayed. So thankfully, before that we had MTC, and it was a pain in the ass to change from LTC to MTC, and MTC is not as reliable. Anyway, so LTC in, and that controls the snapshots. But here's the beautiful thing: because of the virtual sound check, because the LTC is coming in as audio onto my channel, whether the band are playing and I'm receiving LTC from the monitor engineer, or I'm doing my playback from my Pro Tools in my virtual sound check, I still have 8 LTC coming into my LTC channel. Does that make sense? And then that means I can program, and I always have the LTC. And one of the big advantages of this as well is that I give the LTC from my desk to the lights and to the video department. So if I press play on my Pro Tools, not only am I doing a virtual sound check, we could do a virtual production rehearsal. So I press play, and the lights and the video and the audio all run simultaneously, and the artist can sit in front of house with all of us and properly just go into minute detail and make sure that all of the changes that happen, the kind of the peaks of a song or something, that the audio and the video and the lights all change simultaneously, and they're all in tune, and we use the LTC for that, just to tighten up the changes, tighten up the emphasis of the song.
Yeah,
very cool.
I'll echo that as well. We're running that exactly the same, and I also output to our lighting director as well for that reason exactly. It's just so powerful to be able to have that at your front of house position.
So Cam, you were saying before that you're using quite a few layouts in your shows to get the faders that you need in front of you at all times. Do you want to take us through a couple of those layouts that you're using?
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a look here, so I'm actually in pre-show at the moment, line check. So, it's just gone to sleep. So this is my kind of line check pre-show. Obviously on the left-hand side, I've got all the drums, which pretty much sit on this layer. And then second layer is all the instrumentation, synths, SPDs, everything else, a bit of track here, into vocals, and with effects returns here. On the third layer, I've got all of my talkbacks from Tech Talks and the band as well, through to all my output routing and matrices here as well. But obviously this needs to all tuck away when I go into show mode. So that's when I'll click over onto, into my snapshots here. And once the LTC is rolling, and I actually did set up this event. So I'll just turn this event on now. Just because I love the integration of the transport to tools, obviously, and this just gets back to kind of what we were saying before with our snapshots. Obviously, having the markers to integrate with Pro Tools is just invaluable for me. I do so much mixing post with this band that it's just crucial that I have that full integration with Pro Tools. So that's really great to be able to follow along. But basically, yeah, as soon as we go show start, and I'll call that usually down to the playback engineer, will hit next here on my snapshot, and the console will now flash. You can't see tools, but over on my tools, it'll go record arm, enable all input channels, and we'll start recording there. And we're now live and rolling. So really cool. That means that I don't have to forget to hit record on the transport, which I've done before. I've actually put a sticker on saying hit record dummy right here on the transport, because I have gone to show start and forgot to hit bloody record. But yeah, so then once obviously into show now, as you can see, and I'll just turn this event back off because otherwise it's just going to go in and out of record arm. But you can see that now everything that was there before is now gone, which is basically, really collapsing those drums down. That's now on a VCA here on the left-hand side. And everything's more condensed. So I'm now into show mode. I always keep my vocal and effects returns in this in the center section here with my mains, and then all the instrumentation there. And as I flick through track by track, let me just go play on this. You'll see that some things will tuck away from song to song. But, I effectively keep, this is my main section for where my fingers are on the faders. So, I'll mainly stay away from changing things around this section. But obviously, as I'm flicking through, some other instruments that aren't being played are gone. And, here's the guitars popped up here in Like an Animal. And then that's gone again as I go into Lost in My Mind. So that's just, absolutely invaluable for me. Like I was saying before, I obviously, when I built the file initially on the 24D, I wasn't using the last right-hand fader bank here. I've now, since as the show has evolved and so has the show file, I'm running some parallel compression on the drums, with just cool little phaser or flange effect on a parallel as well. So even though I have the drum VCA on the far left, because that's obviously working for my inputs sequentially from one all the way through, I kind of added all these auxiliary things on that right-hand fader bank. And I kind of like it. I don't know. It means like I can kind of throw between the two, get a feel. And because it kind of lands in this effects return area, I kind of have that to play around with. But yeah, that's absolutely invaluable for me, is the layers. That was the biggest thing moving from the profile to the S6L.
And Rob, you're doing a pretty similar thing with yours, aren't you?
Do you want me to show you a little bit of what I'm doing with my layouts? I think it's very similar to what Rob's doing, but I'm just going to share my screen. Give you my overhead view. There you go. That's my desk. 24D. This is my desk of choice. I can just about. I'm not as. I've got little short Scottish arms. You see, so 30 a little bit long for me. So I like everything compact. As Rob was saying, I live on layout 1. So layout number 1, which is layout number 1, is dynamic. And if you remember from the snapshots, it's actually scopable. So I can change the layout with every song. And actually, a little thing I have here is I have my iPad app. We make an app for the venue, which is called the Function Pad app. It just extends the function switches, which are here. It's just a parallel switch on my iPad. But they're just nice and big. So if I want to get to the song Rising Sun, I press Rising Sun. And my desk resets for Rising Sun. If I press Angel, that's the song Angel, Teardrop, you can see the desk resetting. And because I have different singers for each song, like Rob, I have my vocals over here. And you can see this is Rising Sun, and the two vocalists are 3D and Daddy G. But if I press Angel, it's Horace Andy's the singer, and it comes here. And if I press Teardrop, it's Liz Fraser, and it comes to this. So this fader on all of my shows, whether it's Massive Attack or whoever, this is always the lead vocal. And if there's two, and as there is in Rising Sun, then the two vocals are here. These are my effects returns. So I have reverbs and delays here. This is my left-right master. On this side, you can see I have basses and guitars and playback channels. Like Rob, I have two drum kits, both on VCAs here. So I have my acoustic kit VCA, my electronic kit VCA. If I need to get to those channels, I can just double tap my attention switch, and now that's my drum channels are spilled out. Press it one more time, it goes back to being a fader. So even though I've got, I don't know, 80 or 90 channels on the show, with 24, I have everything that I need to get to at any second during the song. So I live totally on layer 1. You know, I can go to my electronic drum kit is spilled out to here. I even take that to the point where I have a sound check. So my sound checks will be like this. So my drum sound check, right? So I have a snapshot for my drum sound check. It brings all my drum channels up on the top, mutes them, and brings the faders down. I have my backline sound check, keyboard sound check, etc. So I use my snapshots and layouts in combination throughout the show. So I pretty much only ever live on layout 1. I have layouts for like the drums, for example. This is my drums layout, which is here. And that would have all of the drums VCA, the drums effects, and still my left, right. If I want to detail something on the drums, probably not during the show, but during a sound check or something. So yeah, layout number 1, controlled by the snapshots. I pretty much live there all of the time.
Yeah, exactly the same. I'm exactly the same. I always stay on layout 1. It's really just in pre-show for me where I'll really jump through those. But I just wanted to touch on the universe screen as well. That's so great for that pre-show as well, to be able to cue from there. I can see it metering. I can just, go straight to that channel and cue it. I can get to that quicker, and I can flick a layout. So yeah, that's great. But exactly the same. Just having the snapshots move between that same layout is really great.
Awesome. So one of the big draw cards for the S6L platform is the variety of plugins available, that you can really kind of get in and shape your sound with all the different tools that are available. Let's just have a chat. What are your kind of top 3 plugins and why? I'll start with Cam.
So I'm using a combination of Waves plus some onboard. Actually, the only other onboard I'm using is Crane Song Phoenix, which, let me bring that up, which I use on my vocals plus my master channel. I've always loved this plugin. I've used it since Profile days. Just the harmonics work so great. And you can just dial it in, and it's still got this beautiful subtlety to it. That just sitting on the output buses is always such a great thing. I don't have a Wave sound group on here, so I can't show you any others. But like the Waves tune for me works really well for my lead singer, and obviously because of the snapshots, I need to be able to recall different keys and really finesse and fine tune from song to song, even down to the tuning timing and everything. I really like that. But primarily I use the UAD live rack via MADI across my channels. I usually have an overview screen to the left-hand side of me, but I treat that's obviously not driven by snapshots. I kind of treat that as an outboard rack. It has, 16 inserts on it with I can have up to 4 plugins on a particular insert chain. But I'll kind of move that. I usually have the console mouse on the right-hand side, and then I'll have the UAD mouse on the left. And I'll kind of lightly manipulate that, during the show, but that pretty much stays fixed primarily. But that really, and I suppose to come back to your question, the main focus on that would be the distressor. That's just, the UAD distressor sounds amazing on the lead vocal and on everything, on kicks and snares, and then with the Shadow Hills mastering compressor on the main outs is just a monster, a complete gluer. That paired with the Phoenix just brings absolute color and shine to the mix. I love the preamps on the S6. I always have from the minute I started using it. It's got a beautiful a really fast response, which works perfectly for this act. So to be able to kind of get that color on the back end, it's great. In the Waves arsenal, the C6 still does the job, gets it done. I'll reach for that where I can. And then the other one is the WNS, the Waves WNS. I've got a very quiet singer. I've only got 3 guys on stage, so lead singer is right next to the drummer, who is like Animal, completely bombastic, wild and loud for an electronic act. It's crazy. You might as well be a metal drummer. But so I get a lot of spill into that vocal. Always battled with that. Had to play around with different primary source enhancers, expanders, but just never sat right until I used the WNS. And I think the multi-banding of that is just invaluable. I don't have it here to pull up and show you, but maybe we can overlay that later on. I really like it. It's a bit of a tone sucker. It will suck the tone out, but I'll compensate for that in post, post that chain with the UAD. I'll use like the curve bender or something else to just lift some air back in, whatever I've taken out. But it's more important for me to get rid of all of that information out of that mic and get it really nice and tidy so I can sit that vocal really, really far forward. That's a real killer, a real secret weapon, I think.
Yeah. So, just sharing the love across all camps there, which is nice to see. bit of UAD and waves and everything. That's very cool. No limits. That's awesome. Rob, what about yourself? What are your go-to, your top 3 plugins?
Wow. Okay. Again, hard to choose from all of that, but yeah, like you said, the great thing about the S6L is you can use different platforms, right, on the desk, and you can integrate them. So let me just share my screen again so you can see what I'm doing. So this is a little. I just throw up my vocal chain. So this is the vocal chain I use pretty much on all of the singers. So first off is you were just talking about this, right? Is the PSE, Cameron? You were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Primary source expander. It's just a little way to just give me a little bit more headroom, just to cut out some of the information. Let me just mute the music, and I can press play, and you can probably see a little bit of that. You see that you can have audio coming in. When it hits the threshold, it will open up the channel. It will expand the channel. Obviously, the singing hasn't started yet on this song, whatever song it is. That just gives me a little bit of extra headroom before feedback, apart from anything, and it just cleans up the send if I'm sending from there to a reverb or to delay. So you can see the singing just started now. So it's a little bit of a kind of it's just a way to keep the signal clean before I start doing anything to it. And I actually, there's a Rupert Neve analog thing called 5045, I think it's called. which I suspect this is based on. I don't know, but I suspect it is. And I did an A/B between the two, and I actually had the analog device, and Neve were kind enough to lend it to me for a while, and it sounded great. But in the end, because of the A to D, D to A conversion, I just preferred it in the plug-in version, and it just kept everything tighter, and it sounds great. And then the next one is 1176, absolute classic. Absolute classic. I've used it since, man and boy, when it was an analog device. And there's only one way to use an 1176, and it's this, right? You grab these two knobs, and they go that way or that way, right?
Yeah.
The first time somebody ever showed this to me in a studio, goes, this is the, and I'm talking about the 70s, right? Literally talking about the 70s. And try to do that with touch and turn, or try to do that with a mouse. You can't, right? You need to have two knobs. So that's why, if I go to my GoPro, you can see those two knobs. I've got those two knobs right here on my desk, right? And that's vital. That's for me, the only way you should be using that plug-in. And then I just finish it off with a de-esser, just in case there's a little bit of sibilance, and it's very, very gentle de-essing on there. Other plugins I like to use a lot. This is the Pro Band multi compressor, phase coherent, so it doesn't mess with the phase of your channel, which is the advantage over some of the other multi-band compressors that this one has. I use it on the bass guitar. You can probably see there the frequency range. So the first band is up to 80 hertz, 85 hertz, something like that. And then the next band is up to 360, then it's up to 2K. And what I do with that is I will tend to choose the crossover point on that compressor that matches the crossover point on my PA system. So I'm controlling how much of the bass guitar is going to the sub speakers and how much is going to the flow on 15s or whatever it is in my line array. So I'm actually using this multiband not just to control the shape of the bass guitar, but to control the way it interacts with the PA system, right? So if normally I'm touring my own system, but if for whatever reason I turn up at a festival or whatever and it's not my system, I'll ask them what's the crossover point between the subs and the bass, and I'll dial that in. It keeps it nice and tight. I did think to do this. I hope you don't mind. It's not too presumptive of me, but I thought maybe I could do this. I've got a little bit of drums that I was going to play for you.
Yeah, great.
Give me 1 second to just line it up so it's all kind of nice and cool. Somewhere here, I believe. I'll just do a little loop on the drum. I'm on my Pro Tools. I'm just doing a little loop on I'm on my Pro Tools rig. I'm just doing a little loop so that it's just going to loop the drums. I do this a lot. Right when I'm programming, obviously. I just want to loop something and work on that loop. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mute my two effects, which I thought might be quite interesting. So I have two reverbs on the drums. So that's the drums. Oh, when I talk, the drums will be lower, so I'll try not to talk. So that's drums without effects. What effects do I have? I'll show you. On this one, this is my drum reverb. Inserted onto that drum reverb, I have other inserts. So I have a Mooger Fooger phaser, I have a Sci-Fi, and I have a Sans amp. And on this song, I have the reverb. The reverb has a Sans amp inserted on it. Okay, that's on one channel. And on the other channel, I have a Sonox reverb, which I'm a huge fan of. I love the Sonox reverbs. I love switching between the early reflection and the reverb tail, and it gives you some cool stuff to play with. And I have a very old-fashioned style for this. I have it gated, right? So you can see I actually have the gate on the reverb return on the Sonox back to the 80s. Right. So let's have a listen without my reverbs. So that's with the reverbs. Let's have a listen to that again. Without. With. So if I just put up the snare and the drum reverb, you can hear that the Sans amp is. I was just going to bypass the Sans amp, just giving a little dirt to the reverb. Is it bypass? In. There you go. So use my plugins just to craft the sound a little bit. So my drum reverb has plugins inserted on it, and my Sony Oxford has a gate on it. Apologies to Sony Oxford and to probably. Yeah, that's just. I like to mess around with the plugins. We got millions of them on board. I've got this. I'm at home here. I have all day long to fiddle about with it. So yeah, and just giving it that extra little 1%, and I hope you could hear it wasn't a bad drum sound without the reverbs, but when you put the reverbs in, it just gives it a bit of a character. I don't know if that was coming over clearly enough over the tinterweb, but I hope so.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks for that, Rob. Really good to see the tools in action there and see how you can really finesse the sound. So Cam, you recently were involved in a really cool little project with Rüfüs live at Joshua Tree. Which is almost as much of a visual spectacle as it is a musical one. Would you be able to give us a bit of a rundown on sort of what the project was like and what was involved in it for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year we went out into the desert, into the dusty desert of Joshua Tree in California. And yeah, we recorded at dusk. Well, the band had the idea with a director, which is actually the keyboardist's brother, to do a shoot right out in the middle of the desert, bring everything in and see if it was possible. Lots of back and forth with the production manager and team to be able to see if it was logistically possible. And we did. We managed to do it, and it came up, great. It was such a visual masterpiece as well, but all tracked on the S6L. Obviously, the key at the time was to get as much redundancy as we could get as well. We only had one shot. We had a very small window to be able to get that recorded and done. So I had the 32. This was actually the start of a run. So they kind of threw it on us to be like, oh, we're going to do this shoot out in the desert. So get prepped for that. And then the next day you're on tour, and we started our North American run. But which I was a bit scared about getting sand in the faders, and was a bit worried post that how that was going to travel, but it was totally fine. But yeah, so we recorded with the 32D, all to my usual tools system. We took an analog ISO, a third ISO out from the split for a secondary 24C, which we had another engineer tracking along. He just used my file and kind of went along and dropped the snaps in, or that was all locked to time code as well. So that was a record. And then our monitor engineer also took a third feed. So we had 3 levels of redundancy for the day. So it was 2 takes of each song, and 1 tight shot and 1 wide shot. So I had a few tracks to kind of mix between in post. But yeah, so off the back of that, we were obviously straight on the road. Like I said, I went straight into mixing, which consisted of, and I'm sure Rob's very familiar with this as well, hotel mixes, studios, wherever you can grab them whilst you're on the road. I remember we were in Denver for 4 days, and I was like, right, I've got to find a space, get in, mix like mad. I have a little setup on the back of the bus, on the crew bus there. So I carry some little 8010s, which I'm using here at the moment. They just sit in a Pelican case with me, and with my Apollo and everything else. And so I can sit there and mix like mad. But yeah, so that went on for a couple more months. We did some over tracking, or the band did some over tracking in the studio after that run. Finished the mixes, got it mastered, and then the chat turned and the management and the director came to me and said, well, we're actually thinking about doing a theatrical release of it. What do you think about doing it in surround or doing a theatre mix of sorts, which I was very keen on doing. To which we ended up going to LA and mixing at the dub stage in LA there and mixed it in Atmos, in Dolby Atmos. So that was amazing. Worked with a guy called Marty Humphrey, the Emmy Award-winning engineer. And yeah, we proceeded to mix it in Dolby Atmos. I think it was a little bit counterintuitive. We kind of went the other way with it in terms of I had already finished the mixes. It was mastered. That was already for the 2-track release. And then, this kind of came up with doing the Dolby Atmos mix. Because we'd kind of locked off on those mixes, I just proceeded to just do stem bounces of everything because I envisaged that the mix would just retain the same, but we'll just kind of spread it out into an immersive sense. And that works really well. I spent another week bouncing out, reprinting all of those stems and creating another session. But we took that in and we just placed it around the room. And we were very fortunate that we premiered the film in LA. We managed to get a test screening in the theatre. So I was able to get that DCP and take it into the theatre and have a listen. The theatre that we previewed it in wasn't Dolby Atmos certified, so it was just a conventional 5.1. The fold down was a little different from Atmos to 5.1, so we actually ended up going back in and just changing the mix a little bit. I think, with the immersive sense, we'd place more in the room, which disconnected it a little bit from the screen. So we kind of went back and pushed it a little bit further down towards the screen for vocals and, the vocals stayed in the center, but more of the synths and everything else kind of back down that way. But with a band like Rüfüs, obviously just being a very dynamic electronic band, there's just so much to work with sonically. It's such a palette. It was such an amazing experience to be able to put it into that context. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, very cool, and really looking forward to seeing when that does surface in theatres. That's well worth checking out. In the meantime, the stereo mix is actually up on YouTube, and I do highly recommend checking it out. As I said, really good production, so it's a credit to you and the team on that one, Cam.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's way cool. I'm really looking forward to hearing the Dolby version of it. I only once in my life I've mixed in Atmos, and a very good friend of mine, Srijesh Nair, who is a Bollywood sound mixer, and me and him spent 3 days in Bollywood in an Atmos mixing studio, mixing a couple of massive Attack tracks, just for fun, actually, more than anything. The temptation is to just chuck it all everywhere, right? And then you the first day or two you're doing that, and then the second day you're kind of going, oh yeah, that's stupid. You gotta have. There's a big screen there. It has to kind of mainly.
It needs to be down there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it is fun to throw a little synthesizer up in the air and stuff.
It is.
It is. It's so much fun.
So aside from snapshots and LTC, one of the other really cool things about the Avid platform that's quite unique is the ability to trigger events based upon other things that are happening on the console. You can do some really unique stuff with that. Rob, what are a couple of the events you're using to make the console kind of work for you?
I'm going to share my screen, and I've got a couple of little events which I think are quite fun. I hope they're fun. I enjoy them. So this one, I want to show you 3D's vocal. 3D is the main singer in the band. He's a rapper, singer, rapper. He has quite quiet voice. If you know Massive Attack's music, you'll know he's got the kind of the little whispery voice that you hear on some of their kind of laid back, kind of groovy kind of tracks that they have. Now then, a couple of summers ago, we were doing a festival run. I wasn't bringing my own PA. We were traveling with festivals all around Europe, and I noticed. On some of the festivals, the PA system was like right on the stage, and because it's a line array, it's bent back. So some festivals where all IEMs, no wedges. So some festivals, 3D was right in front of the PA system. He's literally in front of the PA system. PA systems were on the stage, I guess to keep them dry or whatever, but they're really far back. He's really far forward. He was literally in front of it. So I had this thing where as I was pushing his vocal up, hopefully you can see his fader there, yeah, on the screen. When I was getting up to about 0 dB, everything was cool. I knew I'd do my little line check in the day, and I know at 0 dB, everything was safe, right? That was my kind of my ground zero. I know if I get to 0, I'm cool. Everything's safe. But you know how it is, Cameron, right? Sometimes you get a little bit greedy during the day, and you just go, oh man, I just need another couple of dB on his vocal. And when I get greedy, occasionally I'd get a little kind of 10K or 8K little whistle, right? And nowadays there's no wedges. It used to be when there was a little bit of feedback, I just point at the monitor engineer, right? But nowadays I'm the only one with speakers, so if there's a feedback, it's me, and I'll get a look from 50 meters away or all the way across the.
You can feel it.
Yeah. So I just worked out this little event. Check this out. So as I push up the fader, at 0 I'm safe. At 1 I'm safe. When I'm getting to 2, it's getting a little bit dangerous. So I just drop down the top end on the EQ. And then when I get it back down to safe again, back to 0, it drops it back to 0. It's just a little trick. It's a little cool one. You can imagine, I'm not saying that everybody should do that. I'm just saying this is the kind of things that you can do at events. And if you like, I'll quickly explain to you how that works. If I can find that event, here it is. It's Vocal 3D. And the trigger is fader above 2 on his microphone. And the action is change the high gain, right? And I'll quickly delete that and find it for you. So add, it's a control continuous because it's a fader move. It's a specific channel. It's his channel. It's 3D. There it is. Fader above 0 is the default. I can just double tap it to open it up and change that to 2. Hit enter. So now the trigger is when the fader goes above +2. And here's the action. I'm going to delete that. It is, again, it's a continuous control, right? It's not a switch. It's not a 1 or a 0. Again, it's his channel, 3D. There it is. Fader to 0 is the default. I don't want a fader. It could be actually as I push the fader up, I change the pan or I change the delay time. I changed my high pass filter if I wanted it to be. It could be actually I could change something in my comp or my gate. I could change the ratio of my comp. I could change the threshold of my comp, etc. But in this case, I want to change the EQ. I want to change the EQ high gain. Right? I don't want an absolute value. I want a relative value. I want to bring it down by -3. I want to have a crossfade time, otherwise it'd be really jerky, so I want a crossfade of 1 second. And this is where you can really get your geek on, Rob and Cameron. I can have a linear crossfade, I can have a sine in or out, I can have a circular, exponential. Linear generally hits the spot for me. And actually, so that's the kind of event, the kind of thing I do in my events. As you probably have noticed, I don't know if you have or not, you see this little fader going up and down here? I've been using that on these webinars. When I'm talking, that's fading down the music. And when I stop talking, the music gets to play through. So you probably heard that earlier when I was doing the little demo with the drums. And that's a similar kind of thing. And on that event, I use a meter above. So when the meter on my channel goes above a certain level, it pulls down the VCA that controls all of the music. This one is a pre-post thing, right? So here's my channel. There's my 4 sends to reverbs and delays. Yeah? They're all post-fade. So that means when I push up the fader, I'm sending post-fade, so the sends, the reverbs, and the delays fade with me. But when I get to 0, I don't want any more to go to my reverbs because that's the level. At 0, that's where the level is. That's the amount I want to go to my reverbs and delays. I've set that all up perfectly with my gain structure, right? So what I do is when I get to beyond 0, all my 4 sends just turn to pre. So now they don't go any louder. Yeah? So even if I did get greedy and push the vocal up too far, it's not change. I'm not going to distort my reverbs or my delays, right? And then when I pull it back down to 0, they go back to post. That's a fade down and out.
Yeah, so good. And I've seen that you've got a bunch of YouTube videos up as well with a whole heap of other events-based stuff going on. So if you're interested in that topic, well worth checking those out as well. Cam, what about yourself? Are you doing a similar sort of thing with events in your file?
Not as quite as detailed as Rob, but yeah, definitely. If I just flick back across here, when I go show live, so I have an event here, and I'll just show you my snapshots page for show live. So the event, yeah, I think I kind of talked about this really quickly before, but so yeah, effectively when I go show live, I'll hit next, and I'll just show you what the event is. So it will go. So when I recall snapshot 2 show live, the action is here. Pro Tools will record, enable all venue tracks. And then so when here we go. So when I recall, and then the console will flash on the light bar to tell me that we're into record. And the opposite does for the end. So I've got a final snapshot called QTP on the light bar to tell me that we're into record. And that will stop the Pro Tools record, disable the tracks, and flash the bar again to tell me that we are done. So I'll just show you in real time. So I'm in that line check at the moment. And here I'll go next, disable all tracks and show live. Again Console's flashed, tells me that we're in record. I'll just show you in real time. You can see my tools over line check at the moment. And here I'll go tracks armed. And now we're rolling. Show live. Console's flashed, tells me that hit stop and just bank through to QTP, quicker to pub. Let me just go to the previous snap. And so we would be rolling now. QTP, I go out of that pub, track into end of show. That will now stop record, then does the reverse. Unarms, flashes the console to let me know that show is done, pack down, go home.
Nice.
Very cool.
I've got a friend, Chris Madden, who's a big time S6L operator, and he has this one which is you can have the actual time, like the time of day as a trigger. So he has this thing where he has the walk-in music from an event. So when it gets to 7:30 and the doors open, it triggers the walk-in music.
That's great.
So he had the first week, he had so much fun. He was sitting in catering every day. The production manager would come in and go, "Doors are opening in 30 seconds, man. Get up there and get the walk-in music on." He go, "The walk-in music will happen." He goes, "Don't be stupid." He goes, and then of course you could hear the walk-in music happening in the arena, and the guy would be like, "Huh?" And then it took a few days before they kind of clocked that it was an event. So I thought that was great.
I have to build that in because I get caught out on that every time. Being at catering, getting yelled at to go and run the BGM up to doors.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know if Cam in catering can be used as a trigger or not. Maybe that's a 6.4 feature.
Well, that brings us to the end of everything that we've got for you today. A big, massive thanks to Robb Allan and Cam Trewin for coming to join us tonight. It's great to have you guys join us and share your expertise with us as well. So thank you so much for coming along and joining us.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, man.
Amazing. Thanks, guys.